You may think you know the story of Shelby Nealy, but the truth is darker and more twisted than most realize. Tonight, we peel back the layers to uncover not just the man behind the murders, but the intricate web of deception, tragedy, and justice that followed. In the wake of unimaginable tragedy, how does a family begin to heal? The story of Shelby Nealy and the Ivanic family is more than just a tale of violence. It's a devastating exploration of loss, betrayal, and the fragility of trust within those we hold closest. The Ivanic family was the kind of family you'd find at the heart of a close-knit community. Richard and Laura Ivanic, a couple in their late 50s, had built a life full of love and warmth in their Tarpon Springs, Florida home. Richard was a retired firefighter who was well respected by his neighbors, always quick with a wave or a friendly chat. Laura, his devoted wife, had a nurturing presence that extended far beyond her own family. Together, they created a home that felt like a safe haven, a place where their children and grandchildren could always feel welcome. Their son, Nicholas, affectionately called Nick, was in his mid-20s. He lived with his parents and shared their strong family bond. Nick was known for his friendly demeanor and his passion for video games, often spending hours engrossed in his favorite titles. Though he faced challenges in life, Nick's unwavering optimism and connection with his family made him a beloved figure in their circle. Then there was Jamie, the Ivanic's youngest daughter, who had started a family of her own. Jamie was married to Shelby Nealy, a man who initially seemed like a good fit for her. The couple had 2 young children, and Jamie often brought them to her parents' house, where Richard and Laura doted on their grandchildren. From the outside, it seemed like the Ivanic's lives were filled with love and unity. But as we now know, appearances can be deceiving. Shelby Nealy, the man who had become a part of this tight-knit family, carried a darkness within him that no one could have predicted. His relationship with Jamie was far from perfect, marred by conflict and tension. Over time, subtle cracks began to form in the family's foundation, cracks that would eventually shatter under the weight of betrayal. In late December 2018, the Ivanic family mysteriously went silent. Calls and messages from friends and relatives went unanswered. Concern grew, but nothing could prepare the community for what would come next. The disappearance of Richard, Laura, and Nick was unsettling enough, but the eventual discovery of their fates would send shockwaves through Tarpon Springs. As investigators delved into the Ivanic family's last known interactions, one name repeatedly surfaced: Shelby Nealy. He had been a part of their family, a husband to Jamie and father to their grandchildren. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary family connection lay a horrifying truth. By the time the bodies of Richard, Laura, and Nick were discovered in their home, the Ivanic family story had already taken a tragic turn. But the chilling revelations didn't stop there. What investigators uncovered about Shelby Nealy's actions and his motivations would make this case one of the most shocking in Florida's history. Shelby Nealy's actions defy comprehension, but to understand the depths of his crimes, we must delve into his personality and state of mind. From the moment of his arrest to his chilling confession, one thing became clear. Shelby was unnervingly calm. While most would expect a person in his position to show fear, guilt, or remorse, Shelby's demeanor was cold, calculated, and detached. Experts in criminal psychology suggest that Shelby exhibited traits consistent with psychopathy, a condition characterized by a lack of empathy, manipulative behavior, and a superficial charm. His ability to live for months with the bodies of his in-laws in his home and maintain a facade of normalcy is a hallmark of this condition. It wasn't just his actions, but the calm, almost indifferent way he spoke about them that left investigators and psychologists alike deeply unsettled. During his confession, Shelby described the murders with an eerie detachment, as if recounting mundane events rather than a brutal crime. This calmness raises a disturbing question. Was he fully aware of the gravity of his actions, or did he genuinely lack the emotional capacity to feel remorse? Criminal psychologist Dr. Ann Walters explains, "What makes individuals like Shelby Nealy so dangerous is their ability to rationalize their actions while remaining completely unaffected by the harm they cause. To them, people are often viewed as obstacles or tools rather than individuals with lives and emotions. Shelby's motives, as he described them, were centered around control and self-preservation. He claimed that his in-laws were a threat to his children, a justification that many believe was nothing more than a twisted attempt to shift blame. His relationship with Jamie, marked by reported conflicts and tension, further paints a picture of a man driven by anger and a need for dominance. This lack of remorse and emotional detachment was evident throughout the investigation. Shelby's demeanor in court was equally unnerving, with little reaction to the charges brought against him. It's this emotional void that makes cases like his not only shocking but also deeply unsettling. The tragedy of the Ivanic family wasn't just the murders themselves. It was the fact that the warning signs were there all along. Shelby Nealy had a history of controlling and manipulative behavior, but it often went unnoticed or was dismissed as ordinary family tension. Friends and relatives later recalled subtle but troubling signs. Shelby's possessiveness over Jamie, his tendency to isolate her from her family, and his frequent lies about finances and personal issues. These red flags, while unsettling in hindsight, seemed minor at the time. Yet, they painted a picture of a man who was methodically building an environment where he could exert control. One of the most chilling aspects of Shelby's deception was how he maintained the illusion that everything was fine long after the murders. Using Jamie's phone, he continued to send text messages to her family and friends, pretending to be her. These messages reassured loved ones that she was safe, buying him precious time to cover his tracks. It wasn't until inconsistencies in the messages, such as unusual phrasing or delayed responses, that people began to suspect something was wrong. Detective Mark Simmons, who worked on the case, described the challenges of untangling Shelby's web of lies. He was meticulous in his deception. Every text, every action was calculated to delay discovery. It wasn't until we started piecing together the inconsistencies that the full scope of his crimes came to light. The evidence that ultimately unraveled Shelby's facade was a combination of digital footprints, forensic analysis, and good old-fashioned police work. Investigators traced Jamie's phone activity back to Shelby, finding that he had been using it to orchestrate his cover-up. Surveillance footage, financial records, and phone data painted a damning picture of his actions. What's perhaps most unsettling is how long Shelby managed to maintain his facade. For weeks, he lived with the bodies of his in-laws in his home, carrying on as if nothing had happened. He even interacted with neighbors and went about his daily life, showing no signs of guilt or distress. For the surviving family members and friends of the Ivanic family, the pain of their loss is immeasurable. It's not just the absence of their loved ones, but the horrific nature of their deaths that leaves a scar. Richard and Laura's daughter, Jamie, had already been taken from them by Shelby's hands. To lose 3 more members of the family in such a violent and calculated way shattered the lives of those left behind. Close family friends spoke of their disbelief and heartbreak. Many grappled with guilt, questioning if they could have done something to prevent the tragedy. How do you move forward when the very foundation of trust within your family is torn apart? Shelby's betrayal reverberates beyond just the immediate victims. It's a sobering reminder that even those closest to us can harbor unimaginable secrets. The Ivanic case challenges the perception of safety within the family unit, a place where trust is often taken for granted. Dr. Emily Harper, a sociologist specializing in familial relationships, reflects on the broader implications of cases like this. When a crime of this magnitude happens within a family, it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human behavior. It challenges the assumption that family is always a safe space and highlights the importance of recognizing and addressing conflict and abuse before it escalates. This tragedy also serves as a call to action for communities. It underscores the need for vigilance and support systems for those who may be experiencing familial conflict. The ripple effects of the Ivanic murders extend far beyond the immediate family. Friends, colleagues, and neighbors found themselves grappling with a mixture of sorrow and fear. Many questioned their ability to truly know someone, especially within their own circles. How could such darkness exist so close without anyone realizing it? For the Ivanic family's surviving relatives, the grief is compounded by the loss of trust and the sheer cruelty of the act. It's a cruel irony that Shelby, a man brought into the family through love and marriage, would be the one to destroy it from within. The weight of such a betrayal is not something easily borne, and for many, the emotional wounds may never fully heal. The community of Tarpon Springs also struggled to come to terms with the tragedy. Vigils were held, and memorials were erected in honor of Richard, Laura, Nick, and Jamie. These gatherings, while providing some comfort, also highlighted a shared sense of vulnerability. As one neighbor tearfully expressed, "If it can happen to a family like the Ivanics, it could happen to anyone." Beyond the emotional toll, cases like the Ivanic murders force society to examine how we handle warning signs of familial discord. Shelby's actions didn't occur in isolation. They were preceded by years of conflict, manipulation, and abuse that went unchecked. While hindsight paints a clear picture, the challenge lies in recognizing these patterns before they culminate in tragedy. Experts emphasize the importance of education and awareness. Programs designed to identify and address abusive or manipulative behavior within families can save lives. Whether through schools, community centers, or workplaces, creating environments where individuals feel safe to speak out is crucial. Finally, this case serves as a reminder that healing, while painful, is possible. Surviving family members and friends have found strength in one another and in the community that rallied around them. They honor the memories of their loved ones by sharing their story, hoping to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in other families. The Ivanic family story is one of heartbreak, but it is also a story of resilience. It's a reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. While nothing can bring back Richard, Laura, Nick, or Jamie, their legacy serves as a beacon for change, a call to protect the sanctity of family bonds and to confront the shadows that may lurk within. As the courtroom proceedings unfolded, the shocking details of Shelby Nealy's crimes continued to haunt the surviving family members and the public. Yet, the legal battle was far from straightforward. When faced with the evidence and the potential of a death penalty trial, Shelby opted for a plea deal, a decision that sparked intense debate about justice and accountability. Under the terms of the plea deal, Shelby Nealy admitted to murdering his wife, Jamie, and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. However, the triple homicide of Richard, Laura, and Nick Ivanic remained pending, leaving the survivors in limbo as they awaited another trial. For many, the plea deal for Jamie's murder felt like a compromise, a pragmatic step by the prosecution to secure a conviction while avoiding the uncertainties of a lengthy trial. But for others, it raised questions about whether justice was truly served. Legal expert Sarah Daniels explains, "Plea deals in cases like these are often controversial. On one hand, they provide a guaranteed outcome and spare families the emotional turmoil of a trial. On the other, they can feel like an insufficient response to the gravity of the crimes." The debate centered on the balance between ensuring a conviction and delivering a punishment that matched the enormity of the offense. Some felt that the plea deal was too lenient, arguing that Shelby's actions warranted the death penalty or life without parole. Others believed that the certainty of the sentence was more important than risking a prolonged legal battle that might not yield a harsher outcome. The complexities of prosecuting a triple homicide involving family members only added to the challenges. Shelby's manipulation and ability to live undetected with the victims' bodies demonstrated a chilling level of premeditation, but it also complicated the narrative for jurors. Cases involving familial crimes often evoke strong emotions, and the prosecution had to carefully balance the presentation of evidence with the risk of overwhelming the jury. Defense attorneys, meanwhile, sought to portray Shelby as a deeply troubled individual rather than a calculating killer. They pointed to his claims of protecting his children as a desperate, albeit misguided, justification for his actions. This strategy, while controversial, aimed to humanize Shelby and potentially sway jurors toward a sentence less severe than death. For the Ivanic family's surviving relatives, the plea deal was bittersweet. On one hand, it provided a measure of closure in Jamie's case. On the other, It left unresolved the anguish of waiting for justice for Richard, Laura, and Nick. The triple homicide trial loomed as yet another painful chapter in a saga that had already inflicted immeasurable pain. The courtroom was silent as Shelby Nealy stood to hear his fate. After months of investigation and legal maneuvering, he had agreed to a plea deal, admitting to the murder of his wife, Jamie Ivanic. In exchange, he received a 30-year prison sentence. For some, this deal represented a bittersweet resolution. For others, it sparked outrage. How could such horrific crimes result in anything less than the harshest penalty? Legal systems often turn to plea deals in complex cases, especially those involving family dynamics. In this instance, the prosecution had a difficult decision to make. Should they risk a lengthy trial in hopes of securing a death sentence, or accept the plea to guarantee Shelby would spend decades behind bars? Prosecutor Cynthia Hayes explained the reasoning behind the deal. "We had to weigh the evidence and the emotional toll a trial would take on the surviving family. While 30 years might not feel like enough, it ensures he's held accountable for Jamie's murder and sets the stage for the triple homicide trial." However, the decision wasn't without controversy. Many in the community felt the punishment didn't fit the crime. Richard, Laura, and Nick Ivanic were still awaiting justice, and some feared the plea deal might set a precedent for leniency. Justice, after all, isn't just about punishment. It's also about closure. For the surviving family, Shelby's plea meant they didn't have to relive the trauma of Jamie's death in court. But it also left them waiting for answers about the triple homicide, a trial that would present its own unique challenges. Trying a case of this magnitude is no small feat, especially when the victims and perpetrator share close familial ties. Prosecutors must walk a fine line, presenting the evidence with precision while navigating the emotional weight of the relationships involved. Dr. Alan Peters, a legal psychologist, sheds light on the complexities. Jurors in cases like this often experience a heightened emotional response. They're not just evaluating evidence. They're grappling with the profound betrayal of trust that familial homicides represent. In Shelby's case, the evidence was damning. Forensic data, his confession, and a trail of deceit that included posing as his deceased wife to mislead her family. But presenting this evidence required sensitivity. Jurors needed to understand the premeditation behind his actions without becoming overwhelmed by the emotional gravity of the case. Defense attorneys, meanwhile, argued that Shelby's actions stemmed from a warped sense of protection for his children. They sought to paint him as a man who was deeply flawed but not beyond redemption, a strategy aimed at avoiding the death penalty. The courtroom battles would also delve into the chilling details of Shelby's deception. Using Jamie's phone, he had continued to communicate with her family for weeks, crafting an elaborate facade to delay discovery. Prosecutors framed this as evidence of his cold, calculated nature, while the defense claimed it was a desperate act by a man unraveling under pressure. The plea deal and the upcoming trial raise broader questions about the purpose of justice. For some, nothing short of the death penalty could atone for the magnitude of Shelby's crimes. Others argue that the certainty of a lengthy prison sentence is more important than the unpredictable outcome of a death penalty trial. Legal scholar Rachel Thomas reflects on this debate. In cases like this, justice is often subjective. For the victims' families, closure can mean different things. Whether it's seeing the perpetrator punished or simply knowing they won't harm anyone else again. For the Ivanic family's surviving relatives, the legal process is a painful journey. Each hearing, each decision brings back memories of what they've lost. But amidst the grief, there's a shared hope that justice, however imperfect, will ultimately honor the lives of Richard, Laura, Nick, and Jamie. In the pursuit of justice, we are often forced to confront difficult truths. The Ivanic family's tragedy reminds us that justice is not just about punishment. It's about understanding, healing, and ensuring that such horrors are never repeated. After hearing the chilling details of Shelby Nealy's confession, it's impossible not to be left with a haunting sense of unease. His cold, calculated actions and the complete lack of remorse paint a disturbing portrait of a man consumed by his twisted perception of protecting his family. What makes this case even more unsettling is the dark psychological complexity behind it, a question that many of us will never fully understand. What are your thoughts on this case? Could Shelby have been acting out of a distorted sense of love? Or was he just a man driven by something far darker? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this story as chilling and captivating as I did, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It really means a lot to me. And remember, subscribing ensures you won't miss any of my future deep dives into dark and unsettling true crime cases. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.